What's up, people? Welcome to the Brian Reveal Show. I hope everybody's having a great Labor Day weekend. I don't know about you, but for me, this is a chill time. I don't have anything on my schedule, and it just feels great. I take that back. The only thing that I'm going to do is just cook, chill, put my feet up, watch a couple of movies, Netflix, and chill alone and get ready to get back at it. But you know what? Like I said, I just hope that everybody's having a good weekend. Make sure you continue to stay safe. Make sure you continue to protect yourself, your family. Make sure you stay maxed up, and make sure you stay social distance. We don't need any more people getting sick. I don't need y'all calling me asking me for money. For pills and potions and everything like that. So you know what? Let's get started. Y'all know I talk a lot about relationships. I talk a lot about relationships, marriage, divorce, the different rates and everything like that. I'm no Kevin Samuels. I'm not trying to be. He has his own lane. But I do think that it's important to have a conversation on things that make relationships work, not necessarily about the problems, more focused on the solutions. Y'all know how I get down. And I can't think of a better person to have this conversation with to bring on. I'm bringing on a very special guest who is a best-selling author, right? And has many tools, has many solutions that we're going to actually talk about this evening. So everybody, welcome to the party, author Edward Cunningham. What's up, Eric? I'm sorry, Edward.
Yes. Thanks,
What's up, Edward?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Brian, for the opportunity, kind of reciprocate what you're doing and a lot of things I'm doing. I'm happy to be on the show. Anytime you need me, I'm available. And let's get started.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for coming on. You know, just checking out your book. I've seen you on social media doing your thing.
Right.
I have to say that one of the things that sort of inspired me to bring you on as a guest is, your commentary
Mhm.
is very. It seems like it's very, bullet point
Mhm.
specific. Like you have, um, I would say, suggestions, tactics, solutions that anybody
Mhm.
can incorporate. So,
Correct.
the first question I have for you is, what inspired you to write this book? What inspired you to put this piece of work together?
Well, because the primary reason is because I refuse to live in a loveless household.
Mm,
And I'm on my second marriage, and a lot of people don't realize, but I've always been into this spiritual awareness, and over the years, I've always been very studious. I've always studied relationships, and most of the information that people get out of this book, they will find to be original. A lot of the terms that I created are original, and it's really 20 years of information that I have compiled, and I'm getting older, so it was just about time for me to start to kind of download things from this hard drive. But just to kind of go back with regards to your question, reciprocity is about what we receive in life is in direct proportion to what you give out. You give
mm,
life $1, and life will pay no more. But at the same time, I reached a point in my relationship where I got really exhausted by this sort of scoring system, which is like under like the quid pro quo system, where that I have to monitor what my wife does and then react to that. And so I just reached a point. I said, you know what? That what if I align my energies? In other words, what if I align my energies to be very similar to the way the nature operates, right?
wow.
So reciprocity is about giving out positive energy. What my wife does for me is not contingent upon what I do for her. My wife, and I don't want to kind of get beyond, but I just want to kind of talk a little about the word reciprocity
Hmm.
and how dedicated I am with it. Every Friday, I get my wife flowers. I refuse to let a government-sponsored holiday to dictate to me as to when I'm going to show love to my wife.
Hmm.
And then secondly, like for example, my wife, I think, got on me one day on it may be a Thursday, and I think because something crazy, like well, at least it was crazy for me, but for her, she kind of went off the fact I think I put wet dishes in the cabinet.
Wow.
But and when she got finished, I said, that's not going to stop me from bringing flowers tomorrow. And I think so
Wow.
often, this is when you hear a lot of like women and men, but hear women say, well, I'm doing 100, but I'm doing 100, but Tony's only doing 70. The problem with that is the fact that it's based on your scoring system. Because if you ask Tony, he's going to say the same thing. So for me, and it's not just me, it's also research that I have done that I feel so relieved. I feel so liberated knowing that what I do for my wife has absolutely nothing to do with what she does for me. So that is the basis of reciprocity.
Well, okay. Who would you say your target audience is? Because I know that several different types of relationships these days.
Right. Well,
Especially if we're looking at kind of the modern day evolution of relationships. It's not so specific to the
yeah,
traditional
right.
relationships.
It's to answer your question, and I'm sorry to be so broad with it, but it's really everybody because
Okay.
I talk to my daughter. My daughter's friends are some of my biggest fans, and they're around 22, 23. She's a student at St. John's University, and so and then it also I have my son's daughter. I told him I have a 5-year-old son, and my son's doctor. She's a very renowned doctor, and she said, "Ed, well, I could have used your book. I just got a divorce."
Well,
So and she's 65. So to answer your question is pretty broad because reciprocity is a universal law. So it's going to apply to everything. This is not some kind of some kind of process that's something I created. I didn't create reciprocity. It's just that I believe that that's the way the world operates. In addition to that, and I don't want to get off base. I know we got some other questions coming up, but a lot of people don't realize, like for example, when you look at brain waves, for example, delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, right? People don't realize, but alpha is a state of consciousness, which is 7.83 hertz to be specific. But when they measured the Earth's magnetic field, it also measured at 7.83 hertz. And I don't think a lot of people really realize this amazing power grid that we attach to. That all I have to do is be positive. And I can tell you that for the most part, as far as my wife is concerned, is that I'm having such a great time with regards to my relationship. And again, when I got to the point when I just operate off these laws of reciprocity, things got even better. They were never bad, but this is going to optimize the relationship.
wow, that's very, very powerful. And speaking of that, in terms of an awareness, because universal law works, whether you agree to it, whether you know about universal law or not.
Right.
I guess
Right.
for me, as a single guy, I expect for whoever it is that I'm dating, whether it's casually or
Mhm.
whether it's something that's specific to know, okay, you got to put in what you get out of it,
Correct.
right? And I think that that's how people should show up, but
Correct.
that's not the case all the time.
That's correct.
How does a person know if they're ready to even have the conversation on reciprocity?
Well, I think the world has a very interesting way of aligning your energy with energies that are much more congruent with yours, right? And I just think that and this is not somehow I had to change. I was raised in a household and that I never saw my dad be disrespectful to my mom. So it was easy for me to transition to the full commitment because I really had no other way to do. My dad is just turned 80, and I never heard him tell anyone no. So for me, it was like I was always operating. Some people may perceive that as you just being nice. I don't mean, so see, being too nice to a man, that's not necessarily attractive either to a woman. So the bottom line is that you still have to remain manly at the same time and not feeling feminized because they don't want that either. But to answer your question is that you just know, I think, like, for example, I don't believe that we should seek a mate, but rather we should attract a mate. I didn't seek my wife. I didn't ask her for a phone number, but the energies were so aligned that we knew it was right. And you know it was right when based on how you're feeling. They say that you feel it in your gut. Well, there's a lot of truth to that because people don't realize that the gut has also neurotransmitters in your gut. It is connected to your brain via the vagus nerve. So when people say, I feel it in my gut, you really do. The brain and gut have a synergistic relationship. So if you feel it, you're going to know.
Yeah.
Your body's going to tell you. You don't have to guess. Your body's going to know.
Well, and that's, what I think that is pending. You have you're in the right headspace because we deal with a whole lot of trauma. We've seen so much in our community in particular because, abuse, molestation, all of these other different things that I don't think that people have taken the time to reconcile. So I do think that that's something to consider. Now, in your book, you speak about the different levels for men and for women in terms of, several different factors. Would you like to go into that? Can you explain to the
I think,
audience what that is?
you talking about the chapter 5 top needs of man and woman?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
It took me first of all, you won't find it on the internet. It just took me a lot, and this is one man's opinion, but I think I'm pretty close. And this is somebody who studies sociology, psychology. I study physics. And there's an old saying for anybody who paid attention in physics class, that energy can never be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. You can't give another 20% to your side chick and think you're going to still have 100 for the person in your house.
No.
But as it relates to the question, 5 top needs of man and woman, the interesting thing, because these are, like for people who've been around, like maybe you're 40 and over, they know what a carburetor is. My dad used to say, always adjust the carburetor. So if the smoke starts to clear out, if the smoke starts to come out clear, the motor's running right.
Yep.
And so for me, this is probably one of the last legs that I actually added into Reciprocity, was 5 top needs of man and woman. So before I go into those 5 top needs, I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Okay.
And this is what I missed it, because remember, men, we don't read relationship books because we don't feel we get credit, right? So we have to figure it out. Unfortunately, your relationship has already reached the edges of despair by the time you try to figure it out. But my wife came home from the salon, and she also got a mani and a pedi. We go over, it's fine. Okay, so I'm good. Sometimes I could be a bit wordy, but
no, it's okay. We got plenty of time.
I enjoy what I do.
Okay.
So my wife came home one day, and I was hungry. I was waiting for her to get home, and as she comes up the steps, after spending about an hour and a half getting a mani and another hour and a half getting her hair done, so she was out for about 3 hours doing what women do. Exactly. and some may say in this era of with a lot of the guys, in terms of doing the same thing that a lot of guys do too. But as far as the women are concerned, so she came upstairs, and the first thing I asked her when she came from the salon was, I said, "Hey, honey, what do you want to do for dinner? You want to go out?" And it took me 3 or 4 hours while I was trying to figure out why her energy was so off. And the energy was off because of the fact that I did not notice her hair, her nails, something she spent 3 hours for. And I actually had to apologize because I know better. But I think my hunger pains had distorted my rational thinking. And so that leads me over to 5 top needs of man and woman. And I tell you, out of the whole entire book, this is one that I think that if most guys understand, and I don't want to get around it. I know we're going to talk about, do you have on the agenda to talk about the evolution of the 21st century woman?
I do.
Go into that too?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That's on there.
This is a little bit behind it. I wanted to start it off with that, but nevertheless,
okay.
5 top needs of man and woman. Well, the level 1 is the obvious: water, food, shelter, clothing, right? Because we know that the average person can live to about 5 to 7 days without water. After that, obviously, cells start to go through osmosis, and you're going to kind of check out, right? And then, obviously, food about 30 days, depending on one's body mass index, and then so on and so on, in that order: water, food, shelter, clothing. Where we come to a fork in the road is actually on level 2, and this is where I got it wrong. See, many men, unfortunately, are trying to navigate in 21st century relationships using their grandfather's relationship template, which was basically consist of what I call the golden rule. He who had to go got the rule. He made the decisions, and I'm not trying to paint this picture with such a broad brush, but a lot of men leverage the income, and as a result, controlled a lot of the decisions were being made in the household. So level 2 need that most men think, even today, most men think that a woman's level 2 need is dates, gifts, and trip. It's not that they don't like dates, gifts, and trip, especially for the 21st century professional woman, which on average makes over $80,000 a year to $220 on the average. And so many men are operating off these expired love covenants, which is basically make all the money. But the level 2 is really not dates, gifts, and trip. Level 2 is actually love, affection, attention, praise. A woman does not just want love, affection, attention, praise. She actually requires it in the same way that your car needs gasoline. Mm-hmm. This is why my wife was so pissed that I didn't acknowledge it, because I put my food desires in front of the things which was what her level 2 was: love, affection, attention, praise, and promote. And I do that to my wife, and like I say, on a consistent basis. And some of the things I try to tweak, it was, and that was one of those things. So if we hop over to level 2 need of a man, this gets really, really interesting. But what is obvious is obviously the proof is in the pudding. And in fact, you just have to look around us. But level 2 need for man is really after water, food, shelter, clothing, is really sex. But it's not sex in the book, because most men, unless you're a psychopath does not have a conscience. So this is the one that goes out there and takes what he wants. But the average healthy-minded man has to go through the process. His level 2 is really sex. So what he does, he automatically goes to level 2, which is challenge. Masculine energy responds to challenge. Feminine energy responds to praise and attention. Wow. This is why my wife can't go in a grocery store without a man saying, hey, can I get your groceries for you? Can I help you with your car? What's your phone number? Can I take you to dinner? Can I buy you a drink? Because what happens is that when you go from level 2, which is level 2 is challenge. And so what happens is that man needs challenge in order to get acknowledgement. And this kind of puts us in that dog round when you kind of pet the dog. Good boy. Thank you. Thanks for doing it. So this is why a lot of times that men feel inadequate when you have women going to Home Depot, fixing the windows and cutting the grass, because you're not leaving anything for him to do. Yep. And so, so level 2, so being that we're on the man side, level 2 is challenge, and then your level 3 for the man is acknowledgement. A man cannot get acknowledgement unless he has challenge. Now, a lot of people have the idea that women don't like sex as much as men, and that could not be further from the truth. Women like sex just as much as men, but it's how we get there where it's different. As far as level 3 is concerned. Yep. And we bounce back over to the women's level 3. So let's kind of recap. Level 1 for the woman is water, food, shelter, clothing. Level 2 is love, affection, attention, praise. Right. Level 3 is your dates, gifts, and trip. Most men are operating off of the old covenants where they think her level 2 is her level 3. You understand? But it's not. And especially for that 21st century professional woman, because she really doesn't need your money. The average 21st century professional woman really looks at a man's income as being more of a relationship perk. Like, I really don't need it. It's like getting Sky Miles on your credit card. Like, I really don't need it, but if it's there, I'm going to use it. But she really doesn't need the man today to really buy a house, buy a car, or travel the world, because she pretty much has that box checked off. Grandma capitulated and acquiesced because grandma's needs were much more fundamental, because she was not educated and she didn't have the income. So grandma bounced down that. Grandma just switched it, but it's not because grandma's needs were not level 3. It was always the level 2. Grandma just switched it because she needed water, food, shelter, clothing. And I'm not sure if you ever heard like your aunt and your grandma, especially any women that's back in the 50s and 60s and 70s or in their prime, they used to always say, I want a man with some benefits. Remember those saying? Well, I need a man
I made a song out of it.
Bacon.
Absolutely. J.O.B. if you want to be with me.
Exactly. But but the woman don't need the man for the bacon, though. She has her own pig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it seems like it was a whole movement. And one of the things that I think that you brought up that was very important was, based on needs, physical needs, sexual needs. Correct. How important, speaking of reciprocity, how important is it to, let's say, your partner, how important is it to understand that your partner's needs based on attraction will change, it will evolve? Is it important to consider that, knowing that they change and you may not be able to keep up with it? That may not necessarily be something that is long-term in interest, because there's this narrative of accept me how I am. Right. Knowing that you will change 10, 15 years from now if you're looking for something long-term. So
yeah, well, it's a great question, Brian, but it changes a lot more frequent than that. Our body goes through spiritual changes every 7 years. 7 is used in the Bible over 700 times. The word agriculture is used in the Bible in 35 different verses. And so when we look at the fact that a marriage is really a multitude of many marriages in between, you cannot wait. And the reason I like the question that you asked, because it's so very, very on point. We automatically believe by signing a marriage license is all that is needed to maintain novelty, juice, and spice in a relationship. You couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
I'm further from the truth. And I'll elaborate a little bit when we get to the physiology of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people become stagnant in the relationship. And so what happens is that, and this is no exaggeration, I literally once a year on an annual basis, I'm very task oriented. You mentioned that earlier. You want to have everything is on point because
I could tell.
I can't. I'm not a person. I don't like to express problems and not have a solution. So anytime I say something, it's going to be directly on point because I want to do the research, but not just research on general stuff, but also stuff that I've compiled over the years. But I think that a lot of people also once a year, annually, and I would suggest this for any relationship because the failure to do so, if you wait, could lead your relationship down into a dark, empty cavern with no way to get out. Once a year, I literally take my wife out on a date. It's called basically getting to know you. I'm being facetious. What is your name? Where are you going? Do you like the same foods? Because it's important that I recalibrate those energies, because if you don't do it, you can get to a point where sometimes if the candle burns out, the oil, you may not be able to restore it. Mm-hmm. And if you look statistically, most divorces occur between years 7 and 8. And I was wondering coming up why people would always say the 7-year itch, but a lot of it has to do just to kind of go back to your question, is that it's important to kind of recalibrate energies, but you can't wait 7 years to do it. Every year, because my wife is not the same person I met. I knew my wife for 13 years. She is different in so many other ways, and I wouldn't have it no other way. And tomorrow, I want to be a better person tomorrow than I was today. I mean, my son's name is Kaizen, which means constant and never-ending improvement. It's a Japanese term, but the bottom line is I don't want her to be the same thing, and I don't want to have all the answers because of the fact that I grow when I'm wrong. And so you can't wait till 7, 8, 9, 10 years. You're going to find yourself going to divorce court. You have to recalibrate those energies on an annual basis in order to keep that novelty in a relationship.
Absolutely. Again, everyone, thank you for watching the show. Please feel free to share the live. Please feel free to put your comments, put your thoughts into the chat. We have author Edward Cunningham on the show, giving us some great knowledge, giving us some great info on reciprocity and relationships. You talked a little bit about physiology and the attraction and sort of the sexual dynamic. Can you give us your thoughts on sort of that makeup and that concept?
Well, this I had to be careful with this particular chapter because I didn't want to lose my readers. I know we live in this sort of microwave generation, and I really believe, especially like my daughter's age, that 25 and under is dangerous because they want everything to be solved with an app. They want you to be able to hit an app, and then your whole relationship gets better, and it don't work that way. But the physiology of attraction, I wanted to go light in that particular chapter because, again, I didn't want it to seem like a science book.
Right.
But I did want to elaborate on how we are influenced from a physiological perspective. Before I get into it, my wife is always trying to get me to go out to with a couple of my other friends because I'm always in the house. But I spend a lot of time with my 5-year-old, and it's fulfilling enough. I get so much from my 5-year-old that I don't really need to go out, and I don't drink or smoke. So you know what I mean. So talking about old times, I'm kind of tapped out in about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I have to move. And so my wife tries to get me to go out. And so there's a tournament I think you probably know about in Charlotte called CIAA. There's a HBCUs. They get together and they have this huge basketball tournament.
Oh, yeah.
And she's always trying to get me to go down there. And I said, honey, I really don't go because I don't feel like fighting. She said, you're going to fight? What are you going to be fighting? I said, no, I don't mean physically. What I mean from a physiological perspective is that it's not that I don't think I can make the right decision, but making the right decision doesn't mean that you're not fighting. And so what I told her, I said, you don't realize whatever you think the desire is for a man to want sex, multiply times about 3, right? And I said that when I could be sitting there and just minding my business, it doesn't mean that people are not going to flirt with it, right? And so the good thing is that the fact that I don't drink, so my conscious mind kind of stays very strong and vibrant there to help me make those right decisions. But physiology of attraction just kind of goes in. I just wanted to kind of do maybe just a few paragraphs on what happens to us physiologically. Mm-hmm. So I don't care whether you're the pastor of a church. It's not going to stop you from recognizing a beautiful woman. It's not going to stop you from having, when a man sees a woman that he's attracted to, what happens is that his testosterone levels go through the roof, right? When a woman starts to show affection, what happens, her oxytocin levels starts to elevate.
Right.
When a man starts to fall in love with a woman, his testosterone levels start to plummet, his oxytocin levels start to go up, right? Now,
wow.
I want to get to this other point. This is very, very important. Very, very important. So I tell a lot of people, like, you know how sometimes, Brian, when you go in your car and you turn the ignition on, and all these damn lights come up on the dash, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And basically, for people who don't know, that's because the car is going through systems checks, and whatever's not working, the red light's going to stay on. And I think so often we always trying to figure out what somebody is not doing for us, but then, your diet may consist of a Big Mac meal every day with a Pepsi, and then you wonder why your gut system and the microbes are so screwed up in your guts. And the reason I want to elaborate on that point, because many people don't realize, and I'm not throwing out arbitrary numbers. Anybody who's listening to me, please Google it while I'm speaking. 50% of your dopamine is manufactured in your digestive tract. Your dopamine, and I'm just going to go through the four, but there's a whole lot going on. Dopamine is responsible for it is your reward pathway. It will give us anticipation. It's the reason that you have motivation to do this show. It's the reason that I do real estate. It's the reason that I go and do a lot of the things that I do. And it's all for dopamine. 50% of it is manufactured in your digestive tract. You would think that people would spend a lot of time worrying about what they eat, because it could, in fact, influence in terms of how you think. Now, I'll fast forward over to the serotonin, because this is what's most important. And I'll spend a couple minutes on this because it's so very important on here.
Okay.
Serotonin is not only is it a hormone, it's also a neurotransmitter. The reason it's a combination of both, because 95% of serotonin is manufactured in the digestive tract, 5% is produced in the brain. But check this out. Serotonin is the hormone neurotransmitter that's responsible for how we feel on a daily basis, mood. So when people have bad attitudes, a lot of people don't realize that how much that your diet has influence on how you feel on a daily basis. So as my daughter would say, before you come for me, why don't you check out what you eat?
Wow. She has it on a t-shirt, right?
Yeah, my daughter keeps me cool. So anytime you hear me say something cool, that's because my daughter probably talking.
Right. I like that.
Yeah, but yeah, so and then you have so dopamine, and then you have oxytocin. Oxytocin, when a mother has a child, when she's in the delivery room, the reason that a father can never compete with the bond of a mother and child, because the mother exudes or excretes a tremendous amount of oxytocin. That's where the bond of child and mother comes from. And when women tend to fall in love, obviously oxytocin level goes up as well. I use the acronym DOSE for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. So that's what pretty much that chapter is based. I just kind of break down dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphin, and just to kind of show that, okay, so I wrote notes down because I want to talk about this for a second.
Yeah, take your time.
Remember that Jada Pinkett Smith had that interruption in her life with the affair with
the entanglement.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned it. You stole my thunder, but I was going to use that word. A lot of people thought she was being a bit circuitous with her delivery, but actually, I could not have agreed more with the language and lingo that Jada Pinkett used to describe the moment that she had with that entanglement. Because an entanglement is when your intent, if I were to go down CIAA and my intent is go down there and watch a basketball game and bring my ass right back home, but I happen to have an affair, is an entanglement, meaning that my hormones and neurotransmitter came in combat with my value and belief system. Wow. And it's just that my hormones and neurotransmitter just won the battle, right? And so Jada Pinkett Smith, based on my knowledge, that wasn't her intent to have a sexual affair with this young man. But the entanglement, when you get there, and what happens is that if you feel like you're lacking and needs not being met at home, it puts you in a vulnerable position where that entanglement can actually elevate to being something more serious.
Wow. Okay.
And that's where I get into that chapter, Physiology of Physiology of Attraction, because my wife just doesn't understand. I think she understands now. She doesn't understand that how much discipline that it takes for a man to not capitulate or either acquiesce to a woman who may be aggressive to him.
Wow.
It takes a lot of discipline.
You know what? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, I've cheated before. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't thinking about, which is why I need to order 25 copies of this book and just pass
Right.
it around like it's
Right.
candy.
Right.
But for me, I wasn't thinking about neurotransmitters. I wasn't thinking about some of these entanglements. Yeah. But
Yeah.
entanglements was more so for me an afterthought, right? I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I guess I have to deal with it, knowing what the consequences were, and still, had no, and I'm not a psychopath, just so you know.
Right.
I was a person who was unmarried and not really fully committed to the degree where I think those decisions would actually make a little bit more sense for me to consider.
Correct.
But I do think that once you get to a particular place, obviously, as a person who matures, as a person who grows,
Right.
These conversations, these internal conversations, become a lot more prevalent. They become a lot more rooted in responsibility. But you mentioned something about apps, which is one why I want to transition into the next sort of segment in your book when you talk about the tech policy. A lot of couples right now are on social media. And you got these, what I like to call microwave couples. As soon as they, like each other and, go out on a couple of dates. Oh, let's take pictures together. Let's do this. Let's do that. Talk to us about the tech policy, but if you can tie in, how much of a couple's life should they expose to social media? Because a lot of people can't keep it together when they go public.
I think I don't think social media is the problem. It's the management of the time you spend on social media that's an issue. My wife is on social media just as much. I mean, I just started on social media last year. I had accounts that weren't really using, but when you're writing a book, it's probably not a good idea to not be present on social media if you're looking to, get out the message, so to speak. So I just got on social media. My wife's on social media a lot, especially with the business that she's in. But it's not social media that kills the couples. It's the management and the priority that you put into the social media that causes the problems. Now, as it relates to this particular chapter, it is by far, and I have to be real careful. I just did an event, and with the Black Chamber of Commerce for the United States was there, and I had to almost back off because his wife would say, "What you tell him that?" Like I was getting in the middle. So I have to be real careful how I articulate this because I believe that it is by far the most controversial chapter in the entire book. If you Google technology policy, you're not going to find, I coined the phrase, you're not going to find it. You may find it as it relates to websites, tech companies have technology policy, but you're not going to find technology policies as it relates to relationships. That I'm aware of. And the reason I know because I do a research to see if it exists. Right. Just in case I'm going to trademark something like that. You really can't trademark those type of phrases. But anyway, to get into your question, the reason the technology policy is so controversial, and for couples out there, let me just start with this first. If your house has already been built and the bricks are already in place, you might as well just leave it alone because you're not going to do anything but cause additional friction and turmoil. I am not suggesting that it's either right or wrong. I can only tell you that it was one of the best damn decisions that I made in my relationship. Now, technology policy is that if you can have somebody to maybe send you a message, but for the life of me, I do not know how you can marry someone. And this is just me. I'm not saying anybody, but I don't see how you can marry someone, buy a home, with a 2-car garage, travel the world, have 3 kids. But by the way, you can't use my damn cell phone. It is, to me, one of the most ridiculous damn things I've ever heard of. And so remember, the phone has only been out 30 years. So it has evolved into, I believe, a convenient excuse for a lot of people. Let me tell you why. My wife doesn't go, our codes are the damn same. My wife never goes to my phone because I don't give her a damn reason to. My wife never touches my phone. But my question is, I don't know. I just like to hear some feedback on the justification. Because here's the thing, and you mentioned that question earlier, is that a woman will never have certainty if she doesn't have transparency. Many men think that they have all day women, but they really don't. When a woman has transparency, she will unleash a feminine energy that you never fucking seen before. And I'm sorry for cursing, but
no, of course, this is what I do.
You haven't even seen what your woman is capable of doing.
Right.
But you will never get that energy by living this discrete life that, and by recent studies, the cell phone contains the cell phone in addition to cloud storage. We have cloud storage. We put all that stuff on cloud storage, social media accounts, right? And so my wife has access to it. But why would I be so damn cruel to love the woman the way I love my wife, and then something happens to me and she's in the dark with 80% of my damn life? Don't make no sense to me.
Well,
now, so technology policy is, especially for what I told my daughter, I'm not saying you have to, but I would really have these discussions, because the cell phone and access to technology, I believe, is probably the epicenter of most marital arguments. It just comes up on it, right? Because I mean, I was coming home, took my wife's Range Rover to the shop, and the phone's synced, and she's behind me and all that. But I have no concern because I have nothing there. But the bottom line is that I just don't understand why people are not talking about this more, because it's going to come up. So for me, as far as the technology part, get into a new relationship. This is what I told my daughter. When you get to the point where, and I'm not telling you, this should not be discussed on your first date. This would be too early when you're in that sort of incipient stages of development. But right before you get ready to cross over to being exclusive with somebody, I think the conversation needs to be had as to, what's your feelings on having this area of your life as completely transparent. Because if something were to happen to you, I'm going to be completely in the dark. And I'm going to tell you another story, Brian, is that I know of a gentleman who was in a horrific motorcycle accident, lost his life. He was very popular on social media, but a lot of his close friends, they had about 50 people at his funeral, and they asked the wife, why is the funeral so small? And she said, because I didn't have access to his contacts. And she was going to have to get a subpoena from the court in order to send over to T-Mobile to get his contacts in order to invite them. So these people are mad that she didn't invite them, but she didn't have their information. So my wife and I decided that, hey, we need to establish a policy. And I said, and we collectively agreed that, look here, I have, I'm in love with you so much that I wouldn't want it no other way. I said that I'm gonna put my head on the guillotine, and I'm just gonna trust that you don't pull it. I said, but I'm just giving you everything that I have. And as a result, I got the same thing back from her. So she has my cell phone, she has my social media accounts, because if I become incapacitated, what better person than the person that I walk down the aisle, spend $20,000 on a wedding for, to have access to that information?
Well,
so
I gotta push back. I gotta push back on this. And when I heard your prior interviews, and when I heard you speak on this, I was like, this brother is going to open so many cans of worms right now, particularly with the brothers, because, and I'll tell you why.
I know it.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. So, number one, they call it a personal device for a reason. It is personal.
Okay.
I do think that there comes a point where in relationships, I can't speak to marriage, but in relationships in general, I do think that there is a such thing as being too transparent. And when you are too transparent, it really starts to mess, or since we good now, it really does start to fuck with a person's mind. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, when you open that Pandora's box, you can't turn it off. I do think that and there are instances, even if you're not cheating, even if you don't have anything to hide, if you are an attractive person, if you're a person who's transparent, available, public person, kind of like myself, I gotta say, you're gonna have people, even unwarranted messages. What's up? You look good. Oh, you sexy. Blah blah blah. And it's totally innocent. It's something that's not even solicited. You're gonna create that level of insecurity with your partner.
Yeah, but it
And I
happens.
think
What's
that that's
happened?
something that we really try to mitigate and we try to protect in many
Yeah,
ways. And I'm of the, I'm of the belief and I'm of the practice.
right.
You don't need to know. Yes, we are a couple, but I just don't think that it's necessary to share everything. In particular,
I
this right here.
Right. Okay. Now, they do have diary apps, that you can put codes on. But, if you want to kind of segregate, especially like cloud storage and things like that, I think that, okay, let me tell you another story of someone that I know. He and his wife, he and his wife were in the Caribbean on vacation, right? And the wife dropped her phone down the storm drain, right? They're married.
Wow.
But she is prohibited. We got a house, kids together, but she is prohibited from using his phone to call her mother in his absence. And I'm saying to myself that, and I think you got a good point there, Brian. You don't have to add, because my wife doesn't go into all of. She has access to it, but she doesn't abuse it. My wife doesn't. She doesn't do audits on my phone like, and if she did, I wouldn't allow her to do it. The reason I give her access to it because she doesn't go through asking me a bunch of questions. I think it has to be a very disciplined woman or a very disciplined man, and it can go both ways. Has to realize that, hey, the phone is here so that if something happens to me, it's not for you to go through and start to interrogate me by Easter. Everything's on there. So you're right. It really depends on it. It has to be a very mature couple.
Right.
My wife left her phone at the house. She went all the way to her business. She said, honey, go to my wife. Can you go to my phone? I left it in the house. I put it right on my seat and went up there and dropped it right off. We don't use it for malicious reasons because of the fact she does trust me. We very seldom do it, but it's mainly for the fact that if I become incapacitated, at least you can have access to what, as they say statistically, is 70 to 80% of my life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, so with that, let's move into the and by the way, everyone, thank you for again, great conversation with author Edward Cunningham. Has a book, Reciprocity, things that basically, and I'm going to paraphrase here. It's basically things that keep your ass in check and things that basically won't make you lose your mind in relationships.
Well, Brian, can I say
go ahead.
one thing? I think that your thinking and some of the pushback with some of the other guys, I think those are very valid arguments. And I think that if they were to do it, the rules that I would set is that this is the area that I am permitting, and violation of that is that we're just going to draw this whole, we're going to take and cancel this whole policy all based on where because it's been abused, right?
Yeah.
But mainly it's about access. But you, okay, and you're the minority, okay. But I think being a man, you and I both agree that most, not all guys are not like that. Most people who prohibit, and like with the story I just told you about the guy that his wife couldn't even call her mother in his absence. So in other words, he can't go to the bathroom, she can't use the phone. In situations like that, the reason that a lot of our brothers like that because they got shit on there. That's really really for a lot, okay? But they are, and it may be just 51%, but I'm saying that there's two sides. They got the responsible guy, just look here, you just don't need to be in that part. But you have one that is because they have things on there that, in fact, they're just not being truthful. But anyway, we can go to the next subject.
Absolutely. Okay, so and again, everyone, the book is Reciprocity, available now on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
Reciprocity, how to get the most out of your relationship without losing your mind. Kevin Samuels, a brother that has basically made shockwaves in our community on YouTube and continues to have a growing audience. When I say growing, hundreds of thousands of people. It's like every other week, the brother's platform is exploding. And I think it's because there's such a narrative in your book. You position it around sort of the evolution of the 21st century modern day woman.
Yeah.
I think that you are much more qualified to have this conversation because number one, you're married. Whereas, we're not going to talk about the other person too much, but I do think that there's a lot of points that he makes about the modern woman. Do you think that the modern woman today is set up to have a long-term relationship with a guy also, right? Thinking about that, because you said that there's a lot of brothers who we operate within and this is according to you, we operate within the same sort of parameters, the same sort of model that our grandfathers have shown us.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
How does the guy today under operating under those traditional values have a connection and relationship with a modern day woman?
Well, Kevin Samuels, I get things that people, just like you said, they reference, but I can honestly say I've never watched one of his shows at all. I don't know the brother personally. I've never watched any shows, but things come back to me and people ask about it. I think that I think a lot of it, people, theatrics a lot of times generates a lot of intrigue, right? It's not because people really believe what you're saying, but we have to understand that people weren't watching Jerry Springer for the message. They were watching because they want to see somebody fight. And I think a lot of times people want to see somebody to be obnoxious and tell a woman that you're this and this, and they get they get entertainment from it. And I'm not suggesting that's the case with it. He seems to be a very smart brother. I think that a lot of his views are a little different from mine. Some of them may be a little bit antiquated, right? And especially, I think I heard something about, he mentioned something about he thinks that men are not supposed to be with one woman because of harems 2,000 years ago. And the reason that you had harems back then because women didn't have options. See, this, I want to spend some time on this because this particular subject is very, very touching for me because I don't think a lot of people know the gravity, in particular, of the shit that Black women have gone through for the last 2,000 years. Let me just tell you, especially Black women have been, and people can challenge me on this, but I can, like you said it earlier, if I say something, I'm going to explain it. Black women have been the most oppressed person on this earth for the last 500 years. Right. And I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. Not only have they been oppressed, they have been marginalized, disenfranchised. I almost sound as if I'm, an advocate. I am an advocate for women's rights, but and I don't want men to think that I'm leaving them out there because I'm not scoring my brothers. If anything, I'm trying to help. But people don't realize, in energies, just as we talk about reciprocity, just because you weren't picking cotton doesn't mean that those energies don't proliferate through generations, because they do, right? Yep. Okay. And so people don't realize, okay, so my point is, as far as Black women being the most oppressed in the last 500 years is because, first of all, you had slavery. We know that 400 years of servitude, apartheid, tyranny, and oppression. You carry around a baby, put him on your hip while you're picking cotton, and had the white man come and take him off your hip and say, I'm going to have to sell Tony, right? Mm-hmm. That's number one.
Right.
And so the family was broken up. She kept it together. Let's fast forward, because I don't want to be too much on that piece there, but let's kind of fast forward. Columbus stumbled across San Salvador, 1492. We go fast forward up to Jamestown, 1619. And the first 20 slaves come across Jamestown as indentured servants. But the thing about a lot of people don't realize is that when they took and shift gears and we were no longer going to be allowed to be indentured servants, that they want us to actually be in a slave mode, Black women along with Black men were oppressed. We weren't allowed to read or write without being slashed on. So let's fast forward up to the 60s. Black women were the last in the entire damn country to be able to vote unconditionally in 1964. They were the last one to be able to vote. So when people start talking about women having this attitude, especially professional Black women, I don't look at it as that, because my wife is a fighter, right? My wife, you talk about attitude. My wife's a fighter, but you know what? I don't get that from her. And so my point is that it's not that the Black women, and I'm not saying some do, and I'll get to that way how they can correct that as well when we get to polarity. Black women, when people perceive them as having an attitude, a lot of the energy is the fact that they're really tired of taking shit, right? Of so much they got, you got it from one end. And so they have never been in this space. They have never occupied this space when they have been on the same parallel as men as far as education and income. And I'm just trying to tell guys that if you're waiting for them to go back, you'll be waiting for a long damn time.
Right.
And so I'm talking to women that there's a trend of women that is now starting to realize that there's a damn difference with being alone versus being lonely. See, being alone is really a social designation. Being lonely is really more of a psychological imbalance. right?
Mm.
You know, that's something you may have to get. If you're feeling lonely, then you may have to get some help. But it's nothing wrong with basking in your singleness.
Right.
If the right person ain't come up, don't capitulate and acquiesce. Our grandmothers took one for the team because she needed that for the family. This generation of woman don't need it. She can travel the world, she can buy a house, she can buy a car, and if the right guy ain't come around, she can stay by herself. And if you don't believe me, Brian, go to Home Depot on a Saturday and Sunday morning. 50% of the people in Home Depot are women, buying hand tools, Ryobi drills, they buying lawnmowers. They are doing it. My client told you I sell houses. Young girl, 28 years old, bought a $450,000 house in DC. She just told me at a wedding that we were at because we have a mutual friend. She was, Cunningham, you got to come look at my dining room. I took and put chairs, seating, built the seats and put cushion around it in my entire dining room. I said, well, who did you get to do it? She said, I did it myself. I just watched the YouTube videos. And so if today's 21st century man wants to have a serious relationship with the 21st century woman, he's going to have to make the changes because they have already shifted. Many of us are still just getting the memo. And so in that memo is you can't have successful 21st century relationships using old mindsets that have expired and they're completely obsolete. Our grandfathers did that. And it's not that granddaddy was wrong. It's just that this generation of woman already has what granddaddy was providing. And so she's just at a different place. And if you don't come correct, then and here's the thing, the 21st century, and I have to use professional one because I'm talking about 80,000 up. Then you have the lower hanging fruit, which I'm gonna talk about now. So the 21st century man has one of two choices. Either learn how, as I already put it out at level 2, love, affection, attention, praise. She doesn't need your money. Stop trying to buy her shit. You understand?
Absolutely.
She doesn't need it. What she wants to do, and I had to learn this. I just learned this last year, Brian. I said, I'm gonna stop being on my damn computer doing this work. When my wife, I'm never in the bed on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. But if she comes home and say, honey, can you just lay down with me and just hold me while we watch a Netflix movie? 3 years ago, say, honey, I'm doing too much right now. We could do that tonight. At that time, that was more important to her than me buying her a damn Mercedes. And we just have to understand and resynchronize our energies with the new love languages and understand, right? As far as I'm concerned now, while we're on that subject, it's not just the men. Women have to understand that when you take on these positions of power, CEO, COO, CFO,
nurse, attorney.
I'm sorry?
Nurse, attorney, some of the other, may not necessarily running Fortune 500 businesses.
That's why I said that guys don't. Yeah. I said I got something for the ones that guys don't feel like this ain't I'm not bashing on my brothers. I got something for the women too. So when you start to take on these positions of authority, you have to realize that masculine energy directs, it controls. And so when I talk about masculine energy versus feminine energy, I am not talking about man or woman. I'm talking about energies because it still exists in a gay relationship. Gay relationships still have to have a polarity in order to have a spark. You see one girl going down with a beautiful spring dress, and then you have the other girl with a baseball cap on in a sweatsuit. But the polarity still exists, so the relationship still works. But women have to understand, as you take on these positions, the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. And what I mean by lie to yourself is that I know that women do not need man in order to survive. But I would be remiss to mention the fact that God was very, very smart. He wanted us to reproduce and propagate. And so chemically, don't pretend as if you don't have interests in relationship because you no longer trust the process, right? And so many women who take on positions of authority, and this is one of the things that my wife is so dynamic with. My wife is naturally jovial, gregarious, fun-loving, free spirit, right? But in her business, she's directly controlled. As soon as her hand hits that doorknob, she turns it off. Mm-hmm. Because if she doesn't turn it off, she's going to disrupt what I call domestic polarity. Meaning that you come in, and I don't mean, and when I mean polarity, I don't mean control because my wife makes most of the decisions. But the bottom line is that, and I'm not suggesting that women can't cut grass. I'm not suggesting women can't finish a bathroom. I'm not suggesting, but in our households, we have an understanding as to what our strengths are. So my wife don't get in my business when I say I want to get this Ryobi lawnmower, and I don't get in her business because she tells me to stay out of the washroom, stay out of the kitchen, and I don't get in her business when she tells me that she wants to get a dryer with Bluetooth. I don't even know what the Bluetooth is even today, but I'm not going to get no argument with it because that's your area of expertise. based on what we have established.
Mm-hmm.
So women have to understand that when a man wakes up in the morning, what he looks for is a smiling woman. And when you get to the point where you say, I have the money, I have the car, I have the house, I don't need no man, and that's exactly what you're going to get, because a man wakes up looking for a smiling woman.
Wow.
Woman with a smile. And see, 10% of the women are masculine energy dominant. 90% are feminine energy dominant. This is why, 10% of women, you're an entrepreneur woman. And so I know a guy, he goes to the PTA meeting, he cooks. And so he's not a gay guy, but it's just in the relationship, he's feminine energy dominant. He likes to dress, he likes to dance, he likes to sing, and he doesn't want to do all the things that she does. She's the one that, she brings home the money, she runs the business, she takes care of the bills, but there's still polarity. So the relationship works because the polarity is there.
Mm. Wow. You know what? That's wow. That really just blew my mind, because I think, for me, I'm not a traditionalist. I consider myself to be very open-minded, very progressive in terms of thought and in terms of view. Right. But when you think about polarity, it's generally, one versus the other. How would you explain, or how would you, give a little bit more context to people who are in non-traditional relationships, such as gay relationships, polyandry, polyamorous relationships? Right. How does that polarity work in those types of?
Well, I just mentioned, Brian, that polarity still exists in gay relationships. It doesn't matter what. Okay, you have two men walking down the street holding hands. I assure you that one is dominant with masculine energy and the other one is dominant. Because they're two men doesn't mean that they're both masculine energy dominant. Mm-hmm. One is to have more of a softer side. He understands colors. He can take a room full of junk and make it into a palace. He can take the feminine energy is one of the most beautiful energies of life. It can take a bag of donated groceries and turn it into a meal. It can take the seed of a man and turn it into a family. It can take a broken down house and turn it into a home. Feminine energy takes that which is small and makes it big. Mm. Masculine energy takes that which is big and reduces it for simplicity. Mm. Okay, so gay relationships still have polarity. The fact that they're both men or two women has nothing to do with it. Now, polyamorous relationship is a whole different monster. Okay, and people come up with terms, new things are donated. Well, not donated. New things are committed, and if a term is being used enough, they put it in Webster's dictionary. That stuff didn't really exist, 100 years ago. And so what happens is that when people no longer trust the process, or they come to an impasse with regards to how to keep novelty in their own relationship, they come up with terms to justify their behavior. So then we'll come with polyamory. You know what? It ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm supposed to be polyamorous. I'm supposed to have two women around. Well, no, the reason you want two women is because you don't know how to get the best out of the one you have.
Really?
That's why you want goddamn 2 and 3 women. Don't sit up there and twist it. It's because you don't have the skill set. So therefore, let me say I'm polyamorous. So therefore, and I know your boy had said something about this, that the reason they had a harem because they get something out of each woman. No, that's a bunch of BS. It's not, because the bottom line is that your energy can't get that out of one woman because you don't know how to.
But in some instances, Edward, it is cultural.
Yeah,
it's very much cultural.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's how some dynamics are passed on. And speaking of that DNA dynamic as well, because I'm an advocate for what epigenetics and other stuff that correlates to that. But
epigenetics, wow, you up there with Bruce Lipton?
Hey.
Wow.
Hey, I learned a lot doing this show, man. But I gotta say that.
Wow, that's a whole different show.
Absolutely. So I do think that just in terms of passing on that culture, passing on that genetic memory, I do think that there are some people that are hardwired for this. Yeah. And my depiction of what that is that dynamic has to exchange between each partner involved.
Yeah. Right.
So as long as it's not something that is a collaborative between everyone, but it's more nuanced, I think that's where it works the best.
Yeah. But let me tell you this story, and I'm gonna put the con reverse and go back to the dopamine.
Okay.
Because I missed this point, but I think it's very appropriate for the conversation that we're on right now. I told you that dopamine is the reward pathway. It's responsible for anticipation. It's intense. It's responsible for novelty. Now, I always say, be respectful, but always unpredictable, right? The reason that people get dry spots in the relationship and things become so predictable is because they don't understand how dopamine is produced. And so dopamine is about newness. So for example, and so because if I didn't do these things, I could be polyamorous as well. Because what happens is the body's basically saying that I can't get it all from this one woman, so let me get a second for variety. And that kind of keeps me in tune. And I understand what you're saying, sometimes it becomes cultural, but a lot of people also didn't write Reciprocity. And so when I'm talking about, so from a dopamine perspective, like took my family, one second here.
Yeah, it looks like
Can you
you're
see
clearing up now. I can.
Okay.
It is a
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
just keep.
sounds good.
Yep, you're back.
Okay, good. I hit something I wasn't supposed to hit. But I took my wife to the West Coast. We had to take care of some business out there. And I said, I didn't tell her where we were going, right? And I don't mean in a control standpoint, but we talk about dopamine. I took my wife up close to San Francisco. She said, where are we going? I said, honey, just get in the car and just trust me. We rode from San Francisco up the Pacific Coastal Highway to, if you get a chance, y'all Google Big Sur. You have to go to Big Sur along the Pacific Coast. It is the most majestic, with an exception of Alaska, some areas in Alaska, it is the most majestic view of all of America. And so the reason I didn't tell her, look, now just think about, now let's reverse it. Let's say we were home, say, honey, I got everything scheduled. We're going to go to California. We're going to drive to Big Sur, hit the pictures. Think about the anticipation that generates when I don't tell her. I don't try to control the narrative all the time. But the bottom line is that I care about my relationship and I want to stay in love with my wife until I'm no longer here. And the only way I can do that is to generate ideas in order to keep our relationship fresh. We go somewhere every other month. We just go. Sometimes I tell her where we're going. Sometimes I don't. I took her to Las Vegas. I said, honey, just let's go. I got everything covered. We flew down into the rim of the Grand Canyons, went over Lake Mead, went over the Las Vegas Strip, and she had no idea where we were going. But the response I got from it, that she was so excited. But think about, had I told her all these places that we were going, that it would have no effect on dopamine. And I just think that the fact that a lot of times we want so much of the variety is because we don't understand how to keep novelty in the existing relationship. It's not because the sex is necessarily, and sometimes it could be, but both of them got vaginas, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, everybody, author Edward Cunningham, fantastic bestseller book. You can get it on Amazon right now. It is called Reciprocity: How to Get the Most Out of Your Relationship Without Losing Your Mind. Again, you can find it on Amazon.com. Also, take a look at the profile of the actual video. Look at the details of the video. Not only can you click on the link that will take you directly to Amazon.com where you can purchase the book, $24.90, and also I believe it's 99 cents on Kindle, right?
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And see, this is the thing, right? I'm going to give everybody a special surprise at the very end, right? And you know, this will help, you know, move some things in the right area in terms of book sales. But the Octopus Man.
Oh wow.
At first my mind went a billion different directions because like, you know, you think about an octopus, you think about the little suction, little nodules that are on each limb. Share with everybody what that is. What is your definition? And you know, share with everybody just a little. We don't want to give away too much, but high level, define what Octopus Man is.
Octopus Man evolved with me dropping my daughter off to St. John's University her freshman year. And, you know, sometimes as a parent, you know, you can hope that all of the education that you've given your child is going to be adequate when you let her into, or him, into this cruel world. So I'm in Maryland, so it's about, I think I probably talked to her for about 2 hours, and she was getting kind of irritated because I wouldn't let her sleep. And that's where the octopus man actually evolved, because I couldn't think of anything else. I'm so impressed about you with the epigenetics, because that's so deep. But when we start talking about psychopaths, for example, and I don't think people understand like the magnitude as to why they put psychopaths, like when you have child predators, why they put a child predator on a database, but they don't put the drug dealer, because because your drug dealer don't make you a psychopath. Psychopaths are born, sociopaths are developed. That's the difference between the two. I want you to know.
Wow.
A psychopath does not have a damn conscience. It's the also. I know I'm getting away a little bit, but I'm going to come back to your question.
Okay.
This is why a psychopath can rape a woman and have an erection, because of the fact he's a psychopath. A normal man could not rape a woman if she doesn't want you on top of him and have an erection, because when you look at the sympathetic nervous system, the man's body cannot generate an erection if you're in a sympathetic nervous system state. But a psychopath is so normal, he can pass the polygraph test. His eyes are typically bright, and he says the same shit, and he's just sort of just out there. I knew you. The first two conversations you and I had already, you didn't have to validate that, but I already knew you were a psychopath because of your heart. And I already knew that that's what you, but anyway, that's my point. So now that I have kind of defined psychopath, let me kind of back into how this thing originated when I was talking to my daughter going to St. John. So I told her, and I couldn't think of anything else, but I told her that the octopus rather. The octopus is one of three creatures in the world that not only can it change its color, but it can also change its texture. Not only can it look like a beautiful sandy bottom, it can also feel like the beautiful coral reef. And I told her the importance of waiting 3 to 6 months. And I mean, you really, as a dad, you really want to say, I don't want you to have no damn sex, but it's not realistic. So I just had to come and just sort of capitulate. Look, let me just at least say this. Please wait 3 to 6 months before you give somebody your goodies. Because in most cases, the psychopath doesn't have enough ammunition to last that long, and he will start to expose things that he really doesn't want to expose in terms of inconsistencies in his narrative. And so I told her that not only will he look like the person that you like, he knows all the right things to say. He's often articulate. He's often very charming. He probably dresses well. He talks about a lot of the things that he's associated with. And I said that but the only way you're going to know or be able to differentiate is going to be time, because he's so good with it. I said your failure, like the octopus, to identify these characteristics, as soon as you click close enough, he will sting you and purge you and put you down into submission, as he purges you of credit, financial resources, houses, you name it, all the way through, because he's numb. He could care less based on how you feel, because to him you're just another victim, because he does not process feelings.
Wow.
That is the origination of the octopus man.
Wow, that's deep. That's really deep. And for me, it kind of, just the term itself takes on a few different factors,
right.
Factoring in, the sociopath element. I do think that one of the things that octopuses, if I'm saying that right, I don't know if the plural term of what I see is the ability to take without giving anything back.
That's correct.
And once it takes what it needs to take, and once it's done releasing it,
correct,
right?
That's
then
correct.
It releases it, and it becomes a part of this wounded, defeated reaction that
correct.
You get to it. So that's a great analogy.
Yeah, Brian, when you get a chance, I can tell you're very studious. Look up. They actually have a term for it's called charismatic psychopath. They have actually different types of psychopaths. 10% of CEOs in the country are psychopaths, but everybody doesn't misuse. Yeah, you can look at the statistics on it. Like 10% of psychopaths are 10% of CEOs are psychopaths. This is the guy that they cutthroat, but they great. But I wanted to make that point because I didn't want to generalize the term, because there are different types of psychopath. The one that I'm speaking of is the one they consider to be a charismatic psychopath. But you psychopaths, you have psychopaths who are rapists. Bernie Madoff is a psychopath. These are people who are numb and could care less about how you feel. And it's not that they can't feel. They can't feel. there's a misfire mentally where they do not have the override.
Well, just kind of thinking about that 10%, I think Bill Gates could be one when it comes to his
Possible. Yeah,
vaccine,
yeah.
but
No, I agree with you.
that's
I
a
agree.
different.
I agree. I agree.
Absolutely. So I know we're a little bit over time. I
I'm
do have
fine.
one question to kind of close out everything, and
Hmm.
it has to deal with 50-50 in relationships.
Hmm.
Is that really a dated term?
Yes.
Mm,
Well, I don't have all the answers, but I feel that that's one of the changes. When I talked about earlier, where I made the change. I don't believe it couldn't be more apparent than even now because of the progress that the 21st century professional woman has made. It was acceptable more back in the 50s and 60s when she took one for the team for the sake of water, food, shelter, clothing. But since, in terms of where we are right now, um, the 21st century professional woman is just not having it. And so, as it relates to the 50-50, I don't think that the 50-50 works, which is basically the quid pro quo,
mm,
that we try to even out everything. And the reason that it doesn't work long term is because it's based on your scoring system. And so I believe, and this is the whole basis for reciprocity, I believe that don't be so concerned about keeping score in your personal relationship. If they're going to tie, one thing's for sure, my wife rolls out tomorrow, one thing she's going to miss me. And I always tell my daughter when she goes to get a job, whatever you do, make them miss you. I'm
mm.
going to make you miss me because I already know the energy that I'm giving is high level. And my wife just told me I'm always checking in. And my wife just told me about 2 months ago, see, honey, everything. I just want you to be a little bit more affectionate in the public. I said, I got you, right? And then I tell her things as well. I say, hey, come on, now you see Roger Ray in a minute. Come on, I may say little
Right.
things like that to her because obviously I have needs, but because she doesn't do something doesn't make me stop. So the 50-50 situation, I believe, does not work long term. And that is probably the reason why so many relationships don't, because of the fact that they're trying to quantify the
Wow.
energy from somebody else, looking through their perspective, looking through their lens.
Wow.
So the woman is saying that, men always complain about not getting enough sex, women talk about not getting enough love, right? And so we going back, and the problem with the guys is that we're looking at it through our lens, which is why I broke down 5 top needs of man and woman.
Hmm.
They're looking at it through lens. Look, I like sex just as much as you do, but why don't you try to, like, the one thing, Brian, I want to mention that one of the a friend of mine was talking about how bad things are in his relationship, and I just went down the list. I said, well, when was the last time you took her to a 5-star restaurant with a white tablecloth?
Hmm.
With a white tablecloth. When was the last time you took her on a on vacation? When was the last time you told her, that looked her in the eye and told you love you, and you sit there wanting this woman to just drop down and have sex with you, and the connection is not there? I said, why don't you try attacking it from a different perspective, right? Stop looking at it through your lens and the needs for your penis, and start to attack her needs, and she'll give you what you want.
Exactly.
And that's why my point with 50-50.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, on that, brother, been an incredible guest. I would love to have you back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just, because I do a lot of these relationship conversations, a lot of these
Mhm.
relationship, I guess, deep dives, but I
Yeah,
definitely want to move more for season 2. I definitely want to move more into sort of the panel conversation so we can get a
yes,
little bit more,
absolutely.
volume with these conversations. But,
Absolutely.
everybody, again, I just wanted to say that I hope you enjoyed the conversation. One of the things that I was able to take away from this is not just, I think the word itself, reciprocity, is sort of your gateway into understanding that it's
Right.
not all about you. And I think
Exactly.
that's the other component of the word is, yes, there's how you show up in your relationships, there's how you show up in your intention. But
Right.
if you do not know what that looks like coming from your partner, the other person that you're attempting to court, that
Hmm.
you're attempting to learn, that you're
Hmm.
attempting to build, whatever it is, short term or long term, if you miss that opportunity,
Yeah.
you're in trouble with yourself, because
Yeah.
how you show up with people is a reflection of how you feel about yourself,
Right.
right? So Wow, I think most simply put, that's a huge takeaway that I think that anybody can learn. But Edward, tell people, what do you have going on next? Any events? Tell us how things are going with the
Well, they
book.
can,
I know you just
well, actually, we're kind of ahead of of where we plan to be. The actual book release is not for about another 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so my wife is also my manager, so she's going to be. If you want to see the events, just go onto the website. But we're really just kind of kicking off with a lot. I just happen to have a lot of events that weren't going to wait for the release, so I just happen to do them, including your show. So I would say the best way is to probably just go to the website, author edwardcunningham.com, to kind of stay informed with a lot of the events that I'm doing and things like that. And Brian, just one last tail end of something I wanted to kind of leave for the guys.
Sure, absolutely.
Is that I think the 21st century man has one of two choices to make. Make adjustments with the 21st century woman, and also let her know of how vitally important it is for them to leave you the hell alone when you're trying to do something. Now, don't listen, because I think a lot of women overindulge.
Yeah.
And so you're already making enough money, but then even when I'm trying to cut the grass, you out there picking as to why I'm not edging it. Give your man the autonomy to make decisions, because every man who works a part-time job doesn't need the money. A lot of times they work a part-time job because they're trying to stay away from you. You follow me? And so it ain't all the men. It's the women out there who are overindulging, crossing the line, and then when you have a man that's starting to feel inadequate, the next thing is, no, he's not going to be at home.
Which is a nag, basically.
Which is basically a nag. And so, and then now for the guys, you have a choice. Make the situation work, especially if you are an educated guy, 21st century professional man. Make what you have work, because your alternative is to now grab the lower hanging fruit. And I don't mean it in a debasing way, because the lower hanging fruit, their needs tend to be more traditional, like great grandma. This is the girl who says, "Oh, Tony's such a great man. He helps me with my Pepco bill. He pays my car note. We go to movies and a dinner," and she is so happy. But the problem with the professional man is that she a lot of times can't spar with him on an intellectual basis, so he cheats on her with the intellectual woman. So you're still not going to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You follow me? Because that's where the communication comes from. So the bottom line is that I'm glad the information could hopefully can help. If it help one person, then it's worth it for me.
Absolutely. And I mentioned a little bit of a surprise. So this is what I want to do, because I want to help you get your YouTube count up, brother.
Yeah.
I want to help you get your YouTube count up. So everybody, viewers, Edward's viewers, my viewers, I will give you a Kindle copy, right? And reimburse you. I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to reimburse you, right? Purchase the book on Kindle. And I want you to show me that you went to Edward's YouTube page and you liked it. Send me a screenshot of both. Send me a screenshot to info@BrianReveals. I want you to send me 2 screenshots. One of them is actually going to be a copy of your Kindle receipt. And the other one is going to be a copy of the fact that you have went and liked Edward's and mine YouTube page, right? Yeah. So you got to do all 3. Show me a photocopy of, again, the Kindle receipt. Show me a photocopy that you've liked Edward's YouTube page, and go to YouTube and like the Brian Reveals show. I will reimburse you your Kindle 99 cents for this copy, right? Again, the book is, right? One more time, the book is Reciprocity, How to Get the Most Out of Your Relationship Without Losing Your Mind. With that,
thanks, Brian.
I'll see you later.
I'll see you the next time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Take care.
Have a good night.